Hello, it's Nerd, and this is vlog 5 of the vlog series I'm doing on my current side project, Solar GoldRush. Progress has been good this week. Quick introduction: Solar GoldRush is basically a resource allocation space game made of JavaScript and AFrame. Experimental project just to see how far I can get. Basically doing a little mini space sim. Progress has been good actually. I got my first little bit of play testing done. I had a friend come around and play test it a bit, the basic sort of system as is. So currently there's some new features I've added. I'll just talk a bit about those. And it's starting to feel a little more naturalistic as well in terms of like how everything's laid out. I've done quite a lot of work on that over the last week and a half. This week it's been a bit slow, but then the week before I did a few late night ones on it, and I've got a bit more free time this week, so I expect it to proceed a little faster this week, and it is getting into a good state now actually. Anyway, so main things are planet generation is halfway there. Basically it's the actual functionality more or less works. Currently I've just got it so that when you press spacebar anywhere, it basically renders an environment component, passes it some parameters, and adds some randomization for a bit of fun. Also started adding the mana on the planets, which is just a randomly generated bunch of spheres, but that will probably suffice. And I don't think that adding the collection routine for adding the collection routine for mana will be very difficult, basically. So that shouldn't be hard. It should basically be a point of any time you collide with anything of the registered component type of mana, it just destroys it basically, or the class or whatever. Then it just destroys it and adds one to the your mana reserves. I'll show a little bit of that now, just what that looks like in the basic form. Obviously, like I said, I've just started setting it up, but that's what it works. At the minute I'm just trying to set it. I've got this idea that basically for each planet, I mean there are many ways you can improve. At the minute I'm just using the environment component. We could go and custom with this and generate height maps and do our own custom code for it. But at the minute I think environment component will suffice. It does sort of work actually. Basically it generates a small patch of land anyway. What I'm trying to work out, like I was going to say at the minute, is that basically I want to make it so that there's for each different type of I've started implementing this with somewhat. There's different sizes of planets, right? Some planets are small, some planets are bigger. Now I want it so that basically when it starts the setup, it will create the maximum size of environment component of the players here, right in the middle, and then it will also algorithmically be able to work out positionings to the left, the right, and the top, so that basically the idea is that if we know the player's position relative to everything else, you can just keep on rendering scenery basically by adding a new environment component. But that I've not actually fully worked out. I've started messing around with just adding it so I can track the positioning, because that'll help obviously for debugging. But that would be useful. So then, I mean, in the worst case scenario, maybe we could just have it so it resets the player's position to somewhere else if they start wandering to the end of the map. But that's obviously not ideal. I'm not 100% sure I can get physics system working with A-frame environment components, so that might be a bit of a drawback, but I'm not going to worry about it too much right now. I just don't think the terrain system will support it, because it's more complex geometry than say like a box or something, right? The actual environments are fairly random, like I said. There's different randomized terrain types, which is fairly typical. JavaScript, nothing too difficult there. It's literally just getting an array and then selecting a random element from that array and then using that as the terrain type, for example. So there's 5 different types it could be. It's a fairly simple piece of code to achieve that. Other pretty cool thing I did, basically added in, well, we already had like random planet names. We've also got random solar system and also voice. There's a voice assistant. Now, she's a bit buggy at the minute, so, but basically when you arrive onto the scene first, she'll say, you are in galaxy, and then it's a randomly generated word that gets spat out, but it's a synthesized voice. It sounds not so bad, actually. I want to use that. I'm trying to still figure out the best ways of using that. She also says if you're near an asteroid field, but that can actually be a bit weird because sometimes you'll start off near an asteroid field and just go, you are near an asteroid field, you are near an asteroid field, and she just goes on and on. So I obviously need it to run just for a set amount of, like maybe once or twice. You don't need like a warning every 5 seconds, or however long it takes to execute that. I'm just using native JavaScript for that. I think that's probably about it. I run a time lapse. Like I said, I did do a bit of testing with a. That's actually where I got the idea for the voice synthesis implementation, which actually turned out to be surprisingly easy. I might play a bit of the test. Let's see, but yeah. Anyway, we'll definitely go on to time lapse. It's proceeding fairly well. Probably be an update within the week because I'll probably be hacking away on it a bit more now. That's about it. So without further ado, I'll just follow time lapse and just do my usual voiceover. Like and subscribe. Looks like I'll be doing more of this stuff. Maybe a tutorial soon. It's just a case of getting a good idea and time. I know that I've had a request for a CopyCube tutorial, but I don't really use CopyCube that much anymore. I will maybe do something if I'm going to think of something good, but I've also got some stuff to do this week, so I'm not sure about this week. But maybe I'll have a look at that, like a simple one. Anyway, it's that. Roll time lapse. Okay, here we go. So this will be quite an interesting one. Actually, there's quite a lot of work here. It's actually 14 hours worth of work. Like, I think there's just some asset stuff, like basically as before. A lot of this is tweaking. I started adding the textures for different planets. So started doing that. So each planet has a randomly assigned texture, and then there's that sort of system in place now, so that I can determine which. I also bought. So before, most of the JavaScript libraries were coming from CDNs. I decided to not do that, so that it can be packaged up just by itself and not rely on a CDN, which was a bit of a pain, but probably worth doing. Mike had developed this glow. Effect, so I was just trying to implement that there. I also started doing, so I'm just doing that, but basically tweaking that, having a trying it out, etc. Still half done. Like, I need to go back to that, but I decided to pivot back to that later on, basically, because it's sort of like a nice, it's something for later, basically, where to make it look better, and it will look a lot better with the glow effect. But for now, I'm sort of concentrating just on pure the generative aspect, and yeah. Okay, so more hacking out, that sort of thing. That's basically the same thing again. It's just still hacking out on the glow. It will look pretty good. I think once it's done. At the minute, it doesn't really have any effect because I've just taken it off for now until I can perfect it. Something that I've been going back and forth on is actually orbits as well. So that seems a bit temperamental at the minute. So for example, you want the planets to rotate around 360, just very slowly, just rotate all the way around. Same with the sun. I also think I started playing with the numbers again, because that's always a thing that needs, because there is randomness in it. So basically, there is randomness, and another thing I've been working on a lot more is just getting which I've basically got working now, is essentially getting it so the orbits around the sun, where the planets positioned, look correct. So if you think about it, they need to be positioned basically in a 360 random radius around the sun. Asteroid field tweaking here, I think, flying around, and yeah, just again, like trying to get that to look better and working on that. As you can see there, it's just completely random distribution, not really around the sun. One thing I've done in general, which I'll cover later on, is I've actually changed the entity hierarchy, because before you used to have the sun, and then you'd have a
the planets weren't actually attached really to the sun. They were attached just to whatever position relative to the sun, but not actually underneath in an entity hierarchy. So I changed that. I basically made a solar system hierarchy. Now it's just getting a bunch more sound effects, free ones from open game art, etc., which really helps enhance the game. Just basically, sound effects can make a big difference. It makes it more immersive. So there, I'm just basically sourcing some of these sound effects, adding them in. And yeah, just adding them in nice places. It is a lot better now that we've got the sound effects, got environmental background effects, and sound effects for acceleration, etc. Yeah, I'm playing around with the switching on and off the planets. So basically, what I've done is I've got a planet, an entity for the planets, an entity for the solar system, which is the space scene, and I basically trigger those on and off. So at this point, I'm hacking away at that, and the planet generation as well, which I think I covered a bit in the last one, and also just tweaking those settings that you can add into the AFrame environment component to make them more random and to make them more customizable. It's more interesting basically scene for anybody looking. Again, more of that tweaking positions, etc. A lot of that is this, really. A lot of it becomes that where you're looking at just, I've got this error, it's still haunting me actually. I think it's to do with versions of AFrame and 3JS, which is a bit annoying. You get this error still, get spits out tons of errors about inverse and invert. It's a common error apparently, and it's really annoying because if I upgrade the versions of 3JS and AFrame that are being used, it actually just breaks. So this is a bit annoying at the minute. I need to try and figure out a way workaround for that because I can edit the source out. Anyway, I'm going on from on. So I started adding a physics debugger to the scene, which made me realise like the bounding box around the sun was ridiculous and huge. You can sort of see it there. You've got these huge red flat planes. I have fixed this, so basically I also was trying to do this again position, so I looked into Pythagoras for doing the planetary rotations. I've actually got an implementation of this sort of working now, which is good. This is a bit of a physics debugger test actually, where you can see them flying around the scene, and you can tell there that that's red bounded, that's the bounding box around the sun, so that's a bit bizarre. And also it doesn't completely look naturalistic. If you look, there's a rotation on the sun, which is good at least, but the planets still seem a bit random in their distribution. So this slowed down bit sort of demonstrates that was what I was testing out at that point. And yeah, it looks better, but still, obviously the planets are sort of in relation to the positions of the sun are not correct. So like I said, the way we got around this is to create an entity. Each time we create a solar system, we create a certain amount of solar systems. Solar system, we create solar systems, and then the sun and the planets go around that. So there's a relationship. There's the space basically knows, and the children are underneath the solar system, if that makes sense. The parent is the solar system, and the children are the sun and the planets, which I think are underneath there. So that makes sense. It's more like it's a better hierarchy to use, basically. So I think this will probably end in a bit, and then I'll just get back onto. Obviously, using the inspector, you can sort of see that there a bit better. So that before it was just appending the sun. Now it appends solar systems, and I think here I'm just speeding up again now. So just testing out just in general. So, asteroid field and suns, planets. This is all the planet was looking at that point. Back to the sped up bit again. So I was working on the So basically when you switch from planets to space, you want it so there's a different camera. So I did this player cam entity, which is essentially just a standard FPS camera, but obviously need to switch off. Turn on. I got some interesting effects like that. I was going around, rotating around vertically 360 for some reason. Just a mistake I made. So you've got that funny effect there. Again, just using the inspector to look at the planet, see what's going on in the hierarchy for the planet. Control Alt turns on the inspector in AFrame, which is very useful. You can't really get by without that, to be honest, at some point, especially when you're doing more complicated scenes like this. So you can see they've got planet scene and it creates an entity and the entities underneath that. So we've got the separation of space and the planet scene, because if we didn't have that, and basically how it works is just trigger the space scene to not be visible, and then vice versa, trigger the planet scene to be visible. That seems to work, or more or less got that working. I've still got some tweaking to do on that, the actual landing procedure. Main thing I've actually got to work out on the landing procedure at the minute is so that one can switch between both, but also whichever the closest planet is you can land on. We're going to also have to develop some UI to make sure you want to land on each planet, and also identify each planet, which I've also been working on with the sound feature I was talking about before, where it tells you the name of the planet. I was trying to work out doing a loading bar, but I sort of left that for now, but that is something I want to introduce back in, so that it's like a transition between the scenes, I guess. One thing I tested there was just testing that you could die from being hit by the asteroids, and you actually can, which is good. So that still functions. Basically, if the player box, which is the ship, collides with an asteroid enough times, it will kill the player basically, and it also strobes red, which is quite a cool effect. This is where I was doing the modification I was talking about before with the solar systems, I think. So yeah, just do some tweaking there, galaxies instead of so I was just doing all that there. And this is where I was implementing the speech component I talk about. So a random name is assigned to a planet, and then use native JavaScript speech synthesis, I think. It's a native audio method, and it basically just, when you load up the scene, it says you are in planet, you are in solar system, blah 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 blah, and then same for when you approach a planet, and also when you approach an asteroid. So working that out, still some work to do on that, because it's still a bit, it works, but it seems to just repeat, and also it's a bit random. And the distance wise, we need to figure out some distances. So yeah, again at this point I was just testing a lot of that stuff out, like what distance to go, yada yada yada. I think I was testing it. So I was implementing Pythagoras. My housemate came to join me in with the tester. I'm just looking at what I was doing, just trying to implement Pythagoras for the orbits, and this did eventually work a bit better when I referred to this online source for determining the orbits around the sun. Just tweaking, I think, fixing a few things up. Again, there's debugging physics became a big more of a concern at this point, so I'm just like, basically I wanted to stop those planes being there and just make it all radius bounding box for each, which now works, but I've had to go through and fix a lot of things up. So you can see on the asteroid, it was basically had the bounding box around that fine, so I was obviously doing something wrong. So I was just going through debugging that really, basically. As you can see, like a lot of it's often repetition, and then fixing something up, but then because it's getting quite a big code base now, so you have to be quite careful to keep consistent and make sure I don't break anything in the process of fixing one thing. I think I was looking up some physics stuff there in the physics system library. Again, yeah, basically just trying to work on how do I fix this up. I think the sun's now set to static, they never actually move, so there's no point in making them dynamic actually. Though I don't know, I might have to revisit that possibly. So yeah, just basically going through all that arduous work of the physics, making it so that so the sun has the correct type of bounding box. Just doing a lot of inspection of the scene, trying to figure out what's missing, what needs a bit of work. Okay, a bit more randomization. Speech synthesis, I guess. I think I was working on the approach to the planets, how far they have to be till that triggers off the audio warning. As you can see there, actually I've now added the bounding boxes correctly on the sun. It's now a sphere instead of the broken version it was before, basically. And I think this is where I start to manage to get the radiuses. So you'll see the distribution of the planets around the sun makes a bit more sense now. The scaling also makes a bit more sense. You haven't got huge planets, and like a sun that's maybe just a 1.5 bigger, which doesn't make sense. So again, the physics there have started to work with the radius for the bounding boxes, which is what we want actually. And now it's more better distributed. I think I did manage to get something akin to the proper calculation working there. And then this is planet generation I've been working on. This is the most recent work really. So it distributes the random terrain, selects random terrain objects, and some random scaling. Some more work to do there, like I want to do it so there's different sectors for different planet sizes. And I also have to work out a loop so that you can't walk off the end of the map, which you still currently can do. And I guess the other major thing I started doing here was added mana. So I'm just doing that now, adding a function for generating mana, which worked pretty much straight away. I just need to work out for the player cam so that it picks up the mana and you get a point for it, or some sort of the currency of the game basically. But the mana is pretty simple. It's just literally those blue circles you can see on screen, the blue spheres. That's like what you have to collect in the game. Obviously I can start creating some variation here later, but for now it's just getting the basics in place. I was also doing the planet size. I've not finished that off yet. I was just doing a switch statement so that you could return back the size of the planet, which may affect things when you're doing the planet generation basically. So a different size planet will be generated each time based on the actual size of the planet that you've just visited. This is more or less it. I think the rest of it's just me, the latest up-to-date stuff. This is from yesterday. And yeah, just working on the loop routine from going from a planet to back to space. It's sort of switching basically between both. That's about it. I'll probably leave it there.